This video is now in session, and today we're going to look at the US presidential election, where it stands right now on July 27th, 2024. So, as you can see here, Partisan Irony just created a new US Election Center page on our website, partisanirony.com. This is similar to the election page we had in 2022, where we kept a run-in forecast and what we call the outlook for, at the time, the U.S. Senate, the U.S. House, state governors elections, and state legislature elections. We've changed it a little bit this year. Most notably, we now have a U.S. president outlook. We still have the U.S. Senate and the state governors, but we removed the House and the state legislature outlooks because we want to focus on accuracy, given that 2022 turned out to be different from expectations. So let's start off with the presidency in this video. We're going to look at the Senate and the governors in a different video. So right now, Kamala Harris, if the election was held today, is slightly likely to become president. And the main reason we think this is because of this idea of how people vote for president, right? Which is whether or not you want to continue what has happened under these 4 years for the next 4 years, or if you want change. And currently, based off of the statistics and the feelings that we have right now, it seems like a slight majority of Americans, at least reflected in the Electoral College, wants some sort of stability. So this is, I guess, characterized in 3 different regions: in the Rust Belt, the Southwest, and as well as the Southeast. So let's start with the Rust Belt and what's happening there. The main focus there is the economy. And under Joe Biden, which this election is getting judged on, along with his policies, the Rust Belt has been improving in its economy. Billions of dollars have been poured into manufacturing hubs in the Rust Belt region, and you also have infrastructure improvements going on in the three most contentious states: Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Now, obviously, it seems like the margins are going to be narrower than what it was back in 2020, but for most of these Rust Belt voters, and especially suburban voters, the economy is looking as a whole better, with inflation going down and the Fed poised to reduce interest rates. And then in terms of social issues, there's not much social unrest going on in America right now. You do have the occasional protests against Israel and Gaza, but those haven't flared up like they did in 2020, where you saw major protests in Kenosha, Wisconsin, as well as Minneapolis, Minnesota, and Detroit, Michigan. So with the difference, the contrast we're seeing at this particular moment in July 2024 compared to July 2020, we think that for many Rust Belt voters, they're going to want to continue with 4 more years of the current administration rather than a reversal to Donald Trump's administration. If we look at the polls, currently it's dead heats, almost near dead heats in each of these states. As you saw in the Wisconsin polls, Kamala Harris was tied in one poll and down 1 point in the previous one. In Michigan, you can see here Donald Trump is also ahead in these polls. But again, it's a little bit too, I guess, early to say whether or not these polls will sustain, just because we've had a lot of events happen this past week with Joe Biden exiting the race and Kamala Harris becoming the presumptive nominee. And then if you look here in Pennsylvania, same thing. Trump is a little bit ahead right now. But when we think when it comes time to September, many undecided voters will end up turning their support for Kamala Harris. So that's the Rust Belt region. Now we move on to the Southeast region. And by Southeast, I really just mean Georgia, because Georgia seems like it's now back in play after Kamala Harris has stepped in for the Democratic Party. She's, as we should know, African American, and she has a tendency to galvanize the liberal base, and that will be very necessary in Georgia. In Georgia, the 2020 election, Joe Biden narrowly won the state because of a confluence of factors. A high voter turnout of African Americans powered by Stacey Abrams, and then also suburban voters who were irked off by Trump now switching their support to Biden. And then you also have black voters in not just Atlanta, but also this like Farm Belt region where they were more willing to go out and vote for Joe Biden. These voters which are in fertile areas of Georgia, who are African American, they are a little bit more conservative than their Atlantan counterparts. And so that's why I classify these groups of voters differently from black Americans in Atlanta. So those are the three types of voters that Kamala Harris will need. And before Kamala Harris stepped in, when Joe Biden was the presumptive nominee, it seemed like the African American voters were depressed about Biden in the Atlanta region. And so with lower turnout by African Americans there, you saw that the polls were more favorable towards Donald Trump. If we look at hypothetical polling, you can see here that Donald Trump led in practically every single one of these polls of 2024, and it was by some amount of a margin. 6 points here, 3 points here, 6 points here, 5 points here, 1 point here, 5 points here. But now we shift to Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris is down compared to Donald Trump, but not by as large of a margin, by 2 points generally in the aggregate polling. 2 points, even 1 point here in Landmark Communications. And this is just 3 polls that were sampled right after Joe Biden exited the race, as compared to a ton of polls where you might have seen Biden within close reach of Donald Trump, but with the majority of those polls, Biden was off by 3 or 4 percentage points. Not the kind of margin that can be surmounted 4 months from now. So with this change, we now see Georgia in play, and that's what's helping shift this election to Kamala Harris. Even though we don't think she will win Georgia as of now, the fact that it is becoming more competitive means that Donald Trump has to shift his resources more towards the Sun Belt region, Georgia and the Southwest, and that helps Kamala Harris defend better in the Rust Belt states. And now we go over to the Southwest states, most particularly Nevada and Arizona. So why is Nevada currently Republican? It has to do with Latino voters. Latino voters over the past 4 to 6 years have been trending towards the Republicans, but more specifically trending towards Trump, because Trump has this kind of populist ideology that appeals to Latino voters, of this strongman American ideology, of economic independence, and as well as family values. Those are the things that Latinos generally supported in especially migrant Latinos, where they migrated from South American and Latin and Central American countries that tend to be a little bit more socially conservative than the United States. And so with Kamala Harris being seen as slightly more liberal than Joe Biden, it certainly doesn't change much, unfortunately, for the Harris campaign in the Southwest. Now, she might be able to galvanize younger voters, and particularly younger Latinos, and that may help her in these states. But we still think that as of now, Nevada and Arizona are more likely than not to go to Donald Trump. If we look at the polls for the Southwest, here you can see Nevada. Kamala Harris is down by 10 points in this poll. Now, of course, this was before she entered the race, so we're likely to see a polling bump. But this has been the trend for both Kamala Harris and Joe Biden over the past year or so, where you can see Joe Biden is down, if we look at the June polls, down by 3 points here, although even in this polling, when people are forced to decide, and then here, though, 10 points down, 7 points down, 6 points down, 6 points down, mind you, compared to this original poll from Emerson College, where he was just 3 points down, and then Bloomberg, you have him 5 points down, 5 points again, 5 points, 7 points. So if you take the aggregate polling, Latino voters seem to support Trump more than Biden, and that's important in Nevada, where you have a depressed economy that still hasn't completely recovered after the COVID-19 pandemic. And given that the Joe Biden administration is the incumbent administration, many Nevadans are looking to have some sort of change. Arizona is still an unknown for us, just because we don't have enough polls to determine how Kamala Harris will fare. As you can see here, she's down by 5 points and down by 6 points here, which makes us think that Trump is more likely to win Arizona, but again, we're not sure. we're primarily basing our decision with Arizona off of Nevada. It will be a little bit more competitive than Nevada because you have more suburban middle-class white-collar workers in Arizona than Nevada, but there's still a lot of Latinos who are switching their support from Hillary Clinton to Donald Trump and then sticking with Donald Trump again in 2024. So those are the major regions that we covered in the United States that would be pertinent to this election. Right now, our outlook has Kamala Harris winning by just the narrowest of margins, 270 electoral votes. And then if you look at the change between then and now, Arizona, Georgia, and Nevada are the states that flip from Biden to Trump. And that's generally been the pattern over these presidential elections, which is that whoever wins for the first time, like Barack Obama in 2008, tends to lose more electoral votes the second time in 2012. Now, yes, Kamala Harris is not Joe Biden, but what we're seeing as to how voters think of this election is they're perceiving Kamala Harris as an extension of Joe Biden, given that Kamala Harris was vice president of Joe Biden's administration, and Biden endorsed Kamala Harris almost as soon as he dropped out. So that is the state of play today. What we are looking for over the next couple of months is to see how voters in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Nevada, Arizona, and Georgia think about their choices between now and November. And if you, I guess, wanted to rank a top 3 most important state of this presidential election, it would be Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Georgia. So look out for those states in particular. That's the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. This video is now adjourned, and I'll see you in the next one.